The rain came down harder as the man stood beneath the grand entrance canopy, his worn duffel bag resting beside his feet. Water dripped from the edge of his faded baseball cap while guests hurried past him without a second glance. Inside the lobby, crystal chandeliers reflected off polished marble floors, filling the room with warmth that seemed forever out of reach for someone dressed like him. The young receptionist glanced up from her computer, frowned, and whispered something to the security guard. Within seconds, both were staring directly at the stranger. "Sir," the receptionist called with forced politeness, "I'm sorry, but unless you're checking in or meeting a registered guest, you'll have to leave." The man slowly walked toward the front desk, his calm expression never changing. "I am checking in," he answered quietly. She looked him up and down again, clearly unconvinced. "Do you have a reservation?" she asked. "No." "Then I'm afraid we're fully booked." Before he could respond, another receptionist leaned over and whispered, "Why don't you tell him about the motel down the road? He obviously can't afford this place." Both women chuckled softly, believing he couldn't hear them. He heard every word but simply smiled. "I'd still like to speak with the manager," he said. The security guard stepped closer, crossing his arms. "Sir, you're making the other guests uncomfortable." Around the lobby, conversations slowed as curious eyes turned toward the unfolding scene. A wealthy businessman waiting for the elevator shook his head in annoyance. A family pulling expensive luggage moved farther away as though the soaked father might somehow ruin their vacation. Yet the little girl standing beside him never complained. She simply held his hand tighter and looked up at him with complete trust. "Daddy," she whispered, "it's okay if we have to sleep in the car again." Her innocent words cut deeper than any insult spoken inside the lobby. Several guests heard her, but instead of sympathy, many assumed the hotel staff had been right all along. The receptionist sighed dramatically. "Sir, please leave before I have security escort you out." The father slowly reached into his jacket pocket. Everyone expected him to pull out a crumpled wallet or perhaps a few dollars in cash. Instead, he removed a simple black leather card holder. He opened it carefully, studying something inside for just a second before closing it again. "I'd really prefer to speak with the general manager," he repeated. "It's important." "Important?" the receptionist replied sarcastically. "Unless you're a celebrity or a government official, everyone has to follow the same rules." The father nodded. "You're absolutely right. Everyone should follow the same rules." Those words would carry a meaning no one in that lobby yet understood. Upstairs, the hotel's regional director had just finished reviewing quarterly reports when his phone buzzed. It was a message from the hotel's owner asking for a surprise inspection later that afternoon. No one downstairs knew that the owner almost never announced his visits. Even fewer people knew that he sometimes arrived dressed so simply that employees failed to recognize him. Years earlier, after building a successful hotel empire, he had adopted a personal habit of testing customer service anonymously. He believed true character was revealed only when employees thought no one important was watching. The father standing in the lobby knew this lesson better than anyone because he was the man who had created that tradition. After losing his wife 3 years earlier, he had stepped away from the spotlight to focus on raising his daughter. He rarely wore expensive suits anymore. He preferred ordinary clothes, ordinary cars, and ordinary conversations. Most employees across the company had never met him in person. They knew only photographs taken years ago during ribbon-cutting ceremonies when he looked younger, wealthier, and constantly surrounded by executives. Time, grief, and fatherhood had changed him in ways no photograph could capture. Back downstairs, the security guard reached for the father's shoulder. Before he could touch him, the lobby doors opened once again. The general manager walked in, carrying folders from a nearby meeting. He immediately sensed tension. "What's happening here?" he asked. The receptionist quickly explained that a homeless-looking man refused to leave despite having no reservation. The manager glanced briefly at the father before turning back to his employees. "Sir, I'm afraid we'll have to ask you to leave." The father looked directly into the manager's eyes. "Before I do, may I ask you one question? Make it quick. If your founder walked through those doors dressed like this, would your team treat him any differently?" The manager laughed. "Our founder? Believe me, I've seen his pictures. He doesn't look anything like you." The father smiled gently. "People change." "Not that much," the manager replied. The daughter squeezed her father's hand again. She could sense something unusual in his calm confidence. He knelt beside her and whispered, "Remember what I always tell you?" She nodded. "Kindness shows who people really are." "Exactly." He stood once more and slowly opened the leather card holder. This time he removed an old employee identification badge issued decades earlier when the company consisted of just one struggling hotel. The faded badge displayed a much younger version of the man standing before them. The receptionist barely glanced at it before rolling her eyes. "Nice fake," she muttered. Several guests quietly laughed. One even raised a phone, recording the confrontation for social media. The father slipped the badge back into its holder without arguing. Instead, he took out his phone and calmly dialed a single number. Across the city, an executive's phone rang. The caller ID displayed only one word, "Chairman." The executive froze, immediately excused himself from an important meeting, and answered.